of y'all might not remember, but 2010 was a fairly interesting year. It was the end of the early 2000s and the entry of a new era now known as the 2010s. 2010 was the year that Apple debuted their first iPad, Walking Dead Season 1 kicked off their franchise that'll now never end, and Young Money artist Gutta Gutta dropped quite possibly one of the top 10 worst bars in hip-hop history when he said, "I see me with her, no Stevie Wonder, she don't even wonder, cause she knows she bad, and I got a nigga grocery bag." Now, despite that bar being absolutely trash, it wouldn't be the biggest turd to drop in 2010. The biggest pile of shit belongs to M. Night Shyamalan's Avatar The Last Airbender, an hour and 43-minute live-action film adaptation of a cartoon that spans across 3 seasons. Might I add, a cartoon that many, including myself, consider to be the greatest cartoon to ever grace television. Aang wasn't just the last Airbender, but also a representation of the last great era of Nickelodeon. Although, side note, the golden era of Nick might have not been all that golden if you ask some of the actors from that era. There's a whole Exposed documentary coming out about Dan Schneider this year. If you don't know who that is, just know he's responsible for classics such as All That, Kenan and Kel, The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, iCarly, and more. Rumors for years have claimed that there's a reason he preferred to work on kids shows, and the tea will be spilled when Quiet on the Set drops March 17, 2024 on Max Streaming. Yeah, mark your calendars. Now, as for M. Night Shyamalan's Avatar, it was horrible. Like, it was literally nothing to like about that film. It was clearly Hollywood attempting to cash in on another popular IP that they had no understanding of. If you haven't seen that film, don't bother. I'll save you some time. Just think Dragon Ball Evolution bad. I swear to God, if you boot up that movie, the whole time you're just gonna be watching saying, "Ugh."
My name is Ang, and I'm the Avatar.
Brother, ugh. What's that? What's that, brother?
Now, since that film, us fans have received sprinkles of content all throughout the years that include The Legend of Korra to mixed reviews, guest appearances in video games like Nick All-Stars Brawl 2, and various comic books diving deeper into the lore of the universe. So to our surprise, back in 2018, Netflix revealed they'd be releasing their own live-action adaptation of Avatar. Initially, this was met with skeptical reception, and rightfully so after what M. Night Shyamalan did, but eventually everyone calmed down when it was revealed that the show's creators were on board with this project and consulting every step of the way. Fast forward to 2020, the first red flag pops out. The show's creators announced they'd be leaving the Netflix production, citing creative differences. I felt like this news didn't hit as hard as it should have, but it definitely explains the end product, which I'm going to talk about later in this video. I want to paint the whole timeline of this show's production and the last major red flag that we got, which was on January 29th, 2024. In an article from Variety, it stated, Netflix's live-action Avatar The Last Airbender series is toning down the sexism. We took out this element of how sexist Sokka was. I feel like there was a lot of moments in the original show that were iffy, says the actress who played Katara in the show. Yeah, totally, adds the actor who played Sokka. There are things that were redirected just because it might play a little bit differently in live action. This news set the internet ablaze, much more than the show's creators leaving, surprisingly. Matter of fact, world-renowned content creator The Black Hokage went on to say, "That was literally one of the best episodes. That boy learned a valuable lesson. This is what I was worried about for this live action version, watering down the source material. How are you gonna make a live action version of a show more kid friendly than the cartoon?" Red flags and all, I still decided to give this show a shot. It's only 8 episodes at about an hour apiece, so it is an easy watch. It's something you can complete in a week or maybe in a weekend if you wanted to. And upon completing it, I have some strong opinions on the show, so bear with me till the end of the video. Now, according to most fans on Twitter, this is the worst show ever, but I strongly disagree. I'm more in alignment with world-renowned content creator The Black Hokage's take. Started watching Netflix's Avatar yesterday. It's nowhere near as bad as some of y'all made it out to be on this app. I will say the show is very meh. I'd categorize it as, why does this exist? It adds nothing of value to the series. I don't mind changes to the source material if it makes sense. It's more so, most of the changes just speed up the storyline. They don't let enough of the writing breathe, plus the show is missing the humor. A lot of changes I've noticed so far insult the audience. What used to be cleverly implied in the cartoon is now made painfully obvious in the live action show. I wish I could go into detail without spoiling. Now, that guy said he wasn't gonna spoil spoil anything, but I'm giving you a heads up now. It's kind of hard to talk about this show without spoiling anything, so minor and major spoilers are ahead, although I'd imagine most of you have seen the cartoon, so none of these should be like major spoilers to you. The first thing I want to touch on is Team Avatar. The performances from the actors who played Aang, Katara, and Sokka are just plain flat. Not on an individual level, I think Sokka had some moments where he did captivate the character's essence, but more so as a team. These three have no on-camera chemistry. Great actors find a way to bounce off of one another and even improvise lines off a script if the chemistry is there. Some of the greatest moments in cinema came from improv. An example being Han Solo's scene in Empire Strikes Back, where he says,
I love you.
I know.
the original line in the script was, just remember that, because I'll be back. I'm sorry, George Lucas, but that was awful. It wouldn't have hit the same. Harrison Ford's line matches the character's essence so much better than the original writing, so sometimes you have to let the creators be creative so they can add that seasoning to the meal. My first issue with this show is it felt like Team Avatar was just reading from a script, and very rigidly at that. It's like they didn't let loose and relax. It never came across as if they were actually friends, and that's a huge component of the show. I think the biggest culprit of the three is Katara's actress. I don't know if it's her first major role or not, but I know there's potential because I've seen a clip from her on the red carpet where she showed more personality in 9 seconds than she did the whole show.
The cartoon, a lot of people felt like Katara should have ended up with Aang, but she married Zuko.
What Avatar are you watching?
On a side note, that reporter is getting dragged on social media. In his defense, he's clearly never seen the show, otherwise he wouldn't have asked that dumbass question. That's clearly someone who was forced to work a shift and given questions to ask by a coworker. If you go look up the full interview on YouTube, he kept looking down at his phone for references. Also, you can't even find this clip on YouTube anymore. I think they re-edited it and then re-uploaded it because they didn't want people to see it, but you know, the internet clipped the original one. He still gets some of the blame though for this stupid question, but honestly, whoever wrote them questions set him up, and you should watch your coworkers, bro. Man, somebody is out there trying to get you fired. Keeping it in the realm of defense, I'm gonna give Team Avatar some leeway. I think one of the issues is the show deals with so many heavy adult themes, and I can see that being hard as a kid to tap into those emotions while trying to build chemistry with your coworkers. Versus the cartoon, it's voiced by adults, and seeing as they are more mature, I think they're able to tap into those emotions with having a better understanding of the world. In the live action show, their performances, they weren't terrible, just flat. This is something that could be rectified in the future, seeing as Netflix has greenlit the Earth and the Fire books already. Another reason I bring Team Avatar's age up is because one of the few redeeming things about this show is the Fire Nation's actors. Yes, the Fire Nation steals the show, and it's not because they attack. I just thought the quality of acting was better overall, and I think them being older does play a role. The star of the show is Admiral Zhao, played by Ken Leung. You might know him from Lost, but I'd know him as the villain from Rush Hour. This is one of the biggest surprises of the show. Reason being is Admiral Zhao is not a major character in the cartoon. In the cartoon, he was like Raditz in Dragon Ball. He had his moment, but he didn't play a major role in the overall show and was forgotten eventually, just like Raditz. I'd say they changed Zhao from Raditz to Zabuza and Haku in the bridge arc of Naruto. Still not a major character in the grand scheme of things, but they gave him more shine than before. Naruto stated that Zabuza taught him his ninja way and it pushed him in the right direction when he was younger. I think that's kind of like what they did with Zhao by giving him that extra camera time. This dude has a lot of camera time and the actor makes the most of it. I did not like this character, and please understand, I mean that as a compliment. The dude plays this role so well. He was ambitious, conniving, and slimy. He was a true villain, and the only change that I didn't like is in the final episode, it's revealed that Zuko's crazy sister Azula is the one who supplied him with the fleet to attack the Northern Water Tribe. I didn't like this for a few reasons. First and foremost, it wasn't an interesting plot twist. It added nothing to the context of what was going on. That final fight scene in the Northern Waters could have existed without Azula and turned out exactly the same. How do I know? It's because that's what they did in the cartoon. It felt like the writers were looking for a way to shoehorn Azula into the show as early as possible, because for those of you who haven't seen the cartoon, she doesn't appear until the second season of the show. And I can't stress enough, I am cool with them making changes to the source material. I am not one of these, the book is better ass elitists. I'd argue that's what made the MCU's Infinity Saga run so great. They made changes to the source material where necessary. The issue is, the changes they made in Avatar with Azula add nothing of value to the story. At least in season 1, I'd actually argue it undermines the changes they made to Zhao, and I like the changes they made to Zhao. They set him up to be the big bad of season 1, and instead of letting him go out in a blaze of glory, you undermined the character by doing a cheap last-minute bait and switch. But I don't want to be too negative, so let's dial it back and let me give another positive. I'm gonna keep it on the topic of the Fire Nation. Other highlights include the actors who played the Fire Lord Ozai. The actors also who played Zuko and Iroh killed their roles as well. The Fire Lord actor, man, oh my god, he really embodied that madman that is Ozai. Zuko's actor, he did a great job of conveying a kid in search for his honor and his father's love, and Iroh's actor, he did decent. I say decent because I think he captivated the OG wisdom aspect of Iroh that we all love, but I don't think he quite stuck the landing on the charming, goofy, funny side of this character. But to be fair, nobody in the show is. Netflix's Avatar is not funny. That is something they are gonna have to clean up for season 2 and 3 big time. I think half of it is the acting quality, but the other half is just poor writing. It felt like the actors weren't given much to work with, and it's really weird seeing Aang being so serious all the time, seeing as the essence of his character was he was silly and lighthearted.
Will you go penguin sledding with me?
I think it's one of the reasons why he struggled initially becoming the Avatar. He was a kid that wasn't ready to accept the responsibility, and that's why he had ran away. In the Netflix version of the show, after like the first episode, he's just like, I'm the Avatar and I'm here to save the day. I just find it strange that a child actor is having a hard time acting out the part of his character that should honestly come most naturally to him, which is being a child. Outside of the acting, some other things I want to touch on include the choreography and the special effects. Avatar is full of comedy, great storytelling, and life lessons, but let's not pretend like the action didn't play a major role on why we love this show. It's being reported that Netflix spent $150 million on this show, with each episode costing a little over $15 million. That's MCU blockbuster movie budget to put things into perspective. So now I gotta ask, well, where did all the budget go? Well, obviously they went to the final 3 episodes because those are the ones that look the best. Jokes aside, Avatar utilizes the same tech used when filming The Mandalorian. They're these giant dome digital blue screens that allow you to key people into any place that you can think of. And sometimes the show looked good when it used it, but other times it looked flat out bad. It just felt like they over-relied on this tech and they should have done more real-world location shoots. Like, I understand blue screening the air temple or the water tribes because those aren't real places, but why did they blue screen shots of Zuko and Iroh in the forest? Just go outside. It looks better. There are moments in this show where you can see blatant keys of characters due to the crispy outlines, and it takes the viewer out of the immersion of the world. As for the special effects, I thought the fight scenes looked good, especially the Fire Nation stuff, but for the next seasons, the actors are gonna have to put in some training with this martial arts. The choreography in the fight sequences were just flat out terrible in this show. At times, it looked like one of those pay-per-view influencer boxing events, but they also just happened to have bending powers. It was laughably bad, especially the fight between Sokka and Suki. Each bending style is based off a martial art, so I think it's important the actors at least look the part when they're bending. Nobody looked confident fighting on screen. It looked like they were counting their steps while they were fighting, like and 1 and 2, now you jab, now you kick, now 3 and 4. And on a side note, I just remembered I don't like the changes they made to the Kyoshi Warrior episode. What made Avatar great is it was never preachy. It taught valuable lessons without being judgmental or cruel to the viewer. The change to the script they made was just flat out ass. They changed it to, instead of like sexism, Sokka just doesn't want to let down his dad and that's why he's training on some like peer pressure shit. It just blows my mind that they enhanced the writing on a minuscule Fire Nation character like Zhao, but then they watered down the writing for a character from the Water Nation. Once again, that change to the story served no purpose and they missed out on the opportunity for a great lesson, plus some character development for Sokka. It just felt like it was insulting the audience, as if people weren't capable of grasping mature topics, which brings me to my final and biggest gripe with Netflix's Avatar. It insults the audience. One of the biggest offenders happens in episode 6, which by the way, is the best episode in the season, and this moment I'm about to describe almost ruined the episode for me. This episode gives more backstory on the Fire Nation and why Zuko was banished. You have to understand that tensions had been building all season and things finally came to a boiling point in episode 6. All throughout the show, Zuko is bratty and verbally abusive to his shipmates. The ship's lieutenant eventually expresses his frustrations with Iroh, where he proclaims that Zuko doesn't care about anyone but himself. That's when Iroh tells him he's wrong and proceeds to tell the lieutenant the story of how Zuko was banished from the Fire Nation. So that's when we get a flashback. Long story short, Zuko is sitting amongst the Fire Nation's military officers and the Fire Lord as they plan for their next invasion. One of the generals suggests a plan that involves sacrificing the 45th Division soldiers to make an advance, and Zuko disagrees with the officers' war of attrition. So the Fire Lord asks Zuko what he suggests doing instead, and everyone disagreed with Zuko's plan. So then Ozai picks the original plan. Now, not being able to control his emotions, Zuko lashes out and he tells everyone they should be ashamed for being willing to sacrifice Fire Nation lives so easily. So naturally, to maintain respect amongst his peers, Ozai challenged him to a fight to make an example of Zuko, seeing as he was being disobedient in front front of the nation's most influential people. He beats Zuko's ass, burns his face, and then he tells Zuko, since you don't understand the concept of sacrifice, you're now banished from the Fire Nation and tasked with finding the Avatar, and don't come back until you do. And since you love the 45th Division so much, take them with you on your search. Essentially, Zuko saved their lives. So then the flashback ends with the lieutenant's face stunned, and then he proceeds to say, "Oh my God, Iroh, we're the 45th Division." It was at this very moment that both my girl and I sat up in the bed and said in unison, "Nigga!" That is a prime example of poor writing that breaks the immersion of the viewer because it insults the intelligence. This was an otherwise emotionally gripping scene that could have stuck its landing if it respected the audience. All the writers had to do to tug on the heartstrings of the viewer is let the flashback breathe with a moment of silence, have a wide shot of Iroh and the lieutenant during that moment of silence. Then after that brief pause, you cut to a close-up shot of the lieutenant's face and you have him say something along the lines of, "Damn, I'm sorry, Iroh. I was unaware." That setup would have hit so much harder for the viewer. I mean, sometimes less is more. That being said, all in all, Netflix's Avatar The Last Airbender isn't the worst thing that I've ever seen. I'd rate it like a 6.5. There's potential there, but even with that potential, the fan of me still can't help but feel like, why does this exist? Seeing as the source material is a 10 out of 10, the best case scenario for this show is it matches the quality of the source material, which by the way, that's not even possible because they kind of fucked up the first season. But even if they manage to do that, my argument still stands. Why does this show exist other than corporate greed? But I guess my opinion on why this shouldn't exist doesn't really matter, seeing as Avatar has already been renewed for 2 additional seasons. All I can do is hope that they take some criticism to heart so this show will improve, especially considering that Aang didn't even learn to waterbend in the first season. That was another change I wasn't a big fan of. It kind of defeats the purpose of calling book 1 the Book of Water. So now what? In season 2, he's supposed to learn to earth and waterbend? My head hurts trying to wrap my brain around how they're gonna flesh out waterbending, earthbending, Toph, and Azula in season 2 without the writing feeling rushed again. It's just the truth. Avatar's live action adaptation messed up some things about the Blue Book. But do you know who didn't? Schoolboy Q with his recent album Blue Lips. I've got some interesting thoughts on that album, and if you want to hear more, do me a favor and click the card on the screen. By clicking that card on the screen, you're helping a brother acquire some extra watch time, which is needed to become the YouTube Avatar. But hey, I'm just saying.